Hello, everyone. Hello, and welcome to the Wonder Series, your weekly opportunity to wonder how life could be different if you thought differently, acted in another way. What if you changed your mindset? Who would you be? What would you do? Where'd you go? What would you create? Hi, everyone. I'm Denise Stegall. For those of you who don't know me, I am the CEO and curator here at livinghealthylist.com. And every month we have a different theme. We follow a different theme or a different topic for you to wonder about, because we're all wondering about different ways to upgrade our life, to bring more peace into our world, to bring more happiness into our daily lives. So I am really excited to introduce our special guest today. She is Kealah Parkinson, aka Coach Kiki. Woohoo! Hi, Kiki. Kiki is with Kiki Productions, Communication Coaching. We'll have to ask her about that. Kiki, welcome.
Thank you. So nice. Thanks so much, Denise. And I love your intro. That sounds wonderful.
Thanks. I've been tweaking that for a little bit.
Great.
So tell us about Coach Kiki. Who are you? Where are you? What do you do?
Thank you. I am based in the greater Chicagoland area, so Northwest Indiana, this little corner of the state that's really part of the Chicago suburbs. And so I'm making a joke that we are the Austin of the Midwest. I'm trying to make that a thing because we have our own time zone and all these sorts of things.
I love it.
We're a blend of progressive and family values, kind of just like Austin. We need more of a culture scene. But, I love helping people to find exactly what you're talking about, which is that sense of peace and happiness and confidence by speaking their truth. That's what I do as a communications coach.
Okay, that's speaking the truth. That's interesting, because I think a lot of people don't know what that is. What is truth? What is their truth? So how do you help people do that?
Yeah. So one thing I really like to qualify is that we're talking about being authentic. We're not talking about like dangerous truth, like just stating your mind with no filter, right? That's going to get you in trouble. We still have to have social graces, and now more than ever. And so what I'm really trying to help people get is, what are their core values? Who are they for real, right? How do they speak to their core values and still, speak to their audiences or connect to employers or employees? Super important and hard to figure out on the fly. So what I specialize in is helping people cycle out of fight or flight in the moment. Anytime we do something new, right? And oh my gosh, the world is all new all the time now.
All the time, every day.
Every minute. We were just talking about how our tech works differently every week, right? So whenever there's something new, our brain goes into fight or flight on purpose. That's survival instinct. We have to be really cautious when we're in a new area, like, where are the hidden bears and tigers, right? Or, where's the masked monster? We literally have to be thinking about these types of things for our survival. So it's okay that we get really spooked, and like if we're in a new piece of our job, or we're doing something different with our kiddos, or the tech isn't working right. It's okay that we get nervous. We can use these tools to just calm down and go into our prefrontal cortex and think more resourcefully. And that's really what I help people do. Be authentic and resourceful and resilient.
Oh, I love that. Interestingly, I've been reading a little bit about connection in the limbic system. So flight. I'm going to say this totally.
Yeah, right. Fight or flight. And some people say fight
versus like how the limbic system work, which is emotion and caring. They work together, but they're very different. So it's interesting that we're talking flight and fright.
You're like, what is this? Yeah, it's new. See, this is actually a great example of it, Denise, because this is a new phrase you're learning more about right now. And you're like, how is this phrase?
Actually, it's an old phrase. I've never been able to get it right.
That's okay.
I can authentically say that.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And okay, so here's another thing. You're experiencing making a mistake in your wording, whatever. There are some people who their mindset is, I cannot make a mistake. I'm not allowed to make a mistake, right? And so that's another important piece of resilience that I always work on with every client, which is, it's okay to make a mistake. This is how I learn, and my brain actually grows. That's part of being authentic too.
Absolutely. And I think that is something that so many people are afraid of. We really are afraid to show people who we are at the core.
Yeah, right?
Why do you think that is?
That's a great question. So it's interesting because, prior to 2020 and 2021, we've lived in these little areas, and some people were traveling more and going to different areas and this sort of thing. But for decades and decades and millennia before that, we just basically kind of stayed in our areas. We were born into an area, and we mostly, for the most part, people stayed where they were until about the 50s and 60s in the US. Then there was a little more, and of course there have been, different time periods and eras where people, fled en masse and went to different places. But by and large, we lived where we were born. And so we had certain values for the group, right? There's this concept of shame. And of course, I'm sure we both love Brene Brown and all of her great work on shame, right? And I'm sure your viewers do also. But there's this great concept of that. Why do we have shame? We have shame in case you make a mistake that's critical and is deadly to the tribe. If you're making a mistake and it's actually potentially deadly to the tribe, you need to be shamed in front of everyone so everyone gets the lesson and we don't have to keep making that mistake, right? It's super important. It's a quick hack to getting the lesson. So unfortunately, in our little areas, we use shame to say, stay in line, do what we do, share the values, and we've just overshamed each other and ourselves. And now we're stuck in, I can't make a mistake. What if I do this? And now we're seeing with all these different value sets butting up against each other around the world on social media and in person. Wait, what are we ashamed of now? Why am I ashamed of this? Who cares if I tie my shoes differently than you do? Right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's interesting because we're kind of shedding this a little bit, but still not wanting to lose it. And that's a little precarious position. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting when you do think, migration. My parents moved to the United States in 1965 from England. And so they left their entire family. So I grew up with my mom and my dad, my sister, and kind of family friends. And so it's interesting to always think of, how people used to stay in one area. My family back in England, most of them live pretty close to one another. I mean, within an hour's drive pretty much. But here in the US, I grew up in New York and I loved where I grew up. I thought living on Long Island was great. We had the beach, we were, had the city. It was pretty close. If you went the other way, you could go out to take a ferry and you could be up in New England. And I loved it there.
Yeah.
But I've been living in Minnesota now for 18 and a half years, just over 18 and a half years. And it's different. But when you think I migrated here, and I guess I migrated here, took a plane and walk. Migrating makes me think of people pilgrimaging,
right? A boat or on foot.
I did fly here. It was a 2.5 hour flight, and it is different. When I moved here, thinking back, I probably was much more careful about what I said, how I said it, how I dressed, because I didn't really know what the quote unquote norms were here. So
we were just talking about that right at the top of the show, that I spent one summer in NYC and I did a lot of things to make sure that I fit in. I did a lot of memorizing maps so I would never have to look like a tourist, right? I did a lot of things. I kind of picked up a little bit of an accent, and I was telling you about a conversation I had with a coworker who was like, isn't it crazy in the Midwest how people wave at you all the time and strangers? And I remember thinking, oh, I've done such a good job of blending in. She doesn't know that I'm from there and that's how I am. Yeah, right. So those are subtle things. This is one culture. You and I, my heritage is also English. And so it goes back a couple more generations than yours. And so, we're from the same race even. And we're there are so many varieties of this, right? It can be from one household to the next, one subdivision to the next with the HOA or whatever, right? It can be a different apartment building from the next. It could be city versus country, right? All within the same country, and classes and blah, blah, blah. There are so many ways to do this. And then we're in this place now it's new for all of us who are experiencing this for the first time. And it really is new for the globe because we've never had the tech to connect us so quickly to each other.
Yes. No more shame. No more shame.
No more shame. Let's just, use it for its purpose, right? I always say fight or flight. We never want to completely get out of fight or flight. We never want to evolve out of it, because even if we grow to a point where socially there are no more wars and no more domestic violence, there will still be earthquakes. right? And so I know it's a goal, right? But there will still be earthquakes. So we have to practice that fight or flight. So when it comes up, we can say, oh my gosh, fight or flight. And then we go, wait, is this life or death? No. And then we can cycle out of it. And then we think more resourcefully. And then because we've still practiced a little bit, if something is life or death, we can stay there. We can act better. So it's great. So maybe that's the case with shame. I know the jury's still out on that one.
Yeah, we'll have to see. Well, my husband always says something interesting. He's like, I'm always interested in how it's all going to turn out.
Yeah, right. Me too.
It's intriguing. Like, the last couple of years have been a little bonkers. In every generation, there's always, some situation that, we think is the worst thing in the world. And then 10 years later, there's something else.
Yeah, something new.
There's something else.
Right. Yeah.
But it will be interesting to see how it all plays out, and I think, we all have a huge role to play in that. And I think you make a very good point, being who we are authentically is really the only way we can make that go. We can make that go forward in a very positive way.
I agree 100%.
So interestingly, still on this, I'm going to say it wrong again. No, I'm not.
You can
fight or flight.
See that? You're training your brain already.
Training my brain. Always training my brain to do something. Just not techie stuff.
Right.
Anyway, I digress. One of the things I know, we're always talking when we hear about stress and cortisol levels, we have that flight or fright. Said it wrong again.
There you go.
It seems to always be going.
Yeah.
So on the one hand, it's something that we don't need because we're not getting attacked by lions in the middle of the night. Yet at the same time, it's something that seems to be so prominent in our life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So that's interesting too, because, oh gosh, I just lost my thought on that. Say your question again so I can go back to where I was, because.
So flight or fright.
Sorry, I'm doing that to you. That's not why I did it.
Or flight. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Fight or
Yes.
flight.
Yes. There you go. Good job. Great hack.
On the one hand, we don't need that anymore because we don't live in a place, we're not on the Serengeti where lions are going to attack us.
Right.
Yet at the same time, in our world, we do have increased cortisol and increased
stress. Thank you. Yes.
This is what is the flight.
Yes. See, I started thinking about where people still actually are, like all the tigers and lions in India were like going back into the right. Like I was thinking, some people are actually dealing with this. But okay, so yes, it's great that you're talking about this because now there's this phrase, good stress. And it's just like, good cholesterol, bad cholesterol. We've learned that stress by itself is not always bad. We need a little bit of good pressure to get us to perform at a deadline, to get us to, level up and say, I'm going to correct that mistake and work differently at this, right? Like, so we need a little bit of pressure. If it's just like, that's okay, you failed, and that's okay. That's fine. That it's okay that you failed, but it's okay that you failed and you never have to try harder. That's not the lesson, right? So we need a little bit of stress to say, how can you do this differently? And maybe it doesn't feel good in my tummy to have to talk about that if I'm a kiddo or I'm talking to my employee or my employer, right? But if we actually just go through it, we can learn, again, resilience. I can survive this. This makes me better. A little bit of stress, a little bit of pressure is okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So good stress versus bad stress. And then kind of the way we measure that is just sort of, how am I responding to it? And if I'm not responding well, what are some other tools I can find to help me respond better? It's not like I'm not responding well, I'm quitting, right? You and I were also talking about, like, in our businesses or our coaching practices, like, what is it that, I can do great and what is it that I want to outsource? And that's really important to know. But, you might still want to learn how to do that so you can communicate well with the person or know that they're doing a great job.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So true. So true. Interestingly, I just came across a WordPress book that's about this thing. I love it. It's WordPress for Dummies. I'm like, I think I can manage that one.
Oh, that's great. No, I was going to say, I bet the edition 2 will come out in 2 months and then a month after that. And then.
Well, and it's one of these things, you buy, exactly. As soon as you buy the book, it's obsolete because it's forever changing. And maybe, maybe technology is forever changing because we as people are always changing too.
True. Yes.
So here's a question. So somebody comes to you or somebody is dealing with stress or feeling that they're inauthentic. How do you work with that person? Like what do you do to bring that person from where they are in the frustration, the craziness in their world, the unhappiness, the lack of peace? How do you work with that person and bring them closer to that desired result?
Yeah, with that real peace. So my coaching philosophy is when you are confident, focused, and authentic with your message, you're a magnet to those you wish to attract. So trying to get people centered, right? It's the same thing we talk about like with fight or flight. Right. Ooh, taking a breath actually calms our central nervous system, sends out all the messages, harmonizes that limbic system and the rest of the brain, right? It harmonizes all of it. And so that's just one quick tool. So I teach little hacks like this, but the first tool I give everybody, the primary tool, is something I call the key motto. It's a thing I've trademarked that's like an affirmation statement on steroids. Oh. We've all heard of affirmation statements and this idea that you have to say them 100 times in the mirror every morning and blah, blah, blah. And they make you feel good for 10 seconds and whatever, right? Science around the studies of affirmation statements shows that they don't work unless you already believe them. So the question is, why would I have to say something I already believe? Well, you just use it in the moment to cycle out of fight or flight. So I find like, here's the issue that I keep struggling with. This is my biggest communication challenge in life. When a client comes to me, they're saying this. And then I say, okay, let's talk about a time when this bothered you. And then I teach something else I trademarked, which is the BMT index. What does your body feel when you're experiencing that? What are your moods? What are your thoughts? Because we trigger fight or flight when I'm asking them to share this experience. They're right back in it. Their body's responding as if it's happening, right? And so they're, my body feels like a little bit of nerves and like my heart rate is racing, right? The moods and the thoughts, we identify those. And then I go to, what's the thought behind the thought that whispers in your ear like, hey, Denise, you're going to fail, haha. Let's name that bully. And then let's say, okay, I believe the bully. And so here's the opposite of what the bully is, because that's when people argue. It's, and I also believe I can get better at this when I practice. And that's your affirmation statement. That's your key motto. And you practice using that as your first tool to show you can cycle out of fight or flight. It's super awesome. And I love doing it with people. I
love that. I need a key motto.
I know, right? I'll give you one.
We need a key motto here.
I have my own. I actually have my own. Mine is, I am petite and powerful. And I say it before speaking presentations because I'm introverted and shy. And I'm like, I'm speaking in front of people, even though I'm a professional communicator and I get paid to do this all the time, right? I have to say my motto and use my tools because I'm a person.
I love it. You said you're an introvert. I'm like, you are?
I know, exactly. Right? It works.
It's always interesting when people tell me that because I've never thought of myself that way until I've gotten older. I love to be around people. I'm energized when I'm around people, but at the same time, I really like my space.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think people don't realize that you can actually have a little bit of both.
You can. Now there's this great phrase called ambivert, right? Somebody who draws from each one. Like sometimes I get energized and sometimes I don't. And maybe I don't even know when that's going to be. I'm straight up introvert. So I love something like this. It's awesome. And then today I've got meeting. And then I'm going to crash tonight. And I've got some space tomorrow to decompress. Because otherwise I would be like,
Yeah, they get to a point. I mean, even I get to a point where it's like, okay, enough. I love people, but enough of people.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I'm a social introvert. I should qualify that because a lot of introverts would not be I do love this. I love this connecting, but it makes me need to sleep afterwards.
Yeah, well, it takes energy to really communicate, and there's that word, communicate, and to really connect with people. How many times have you gone to an event or a networking or something and you're there, but you don't really feel like you're connecting with people, and it's just, why did you
and that's draining. Yeah. Then there are some people who are like, well, I'm not connecting with people. Well, let me just go make that happen, because if I'm not, then that's draining for them. Yeah. I've got one child who's an extrovert, and God help him. He's one extrovert in a family of introverts. And we have to remember, like, take him places. He has to be around people. That's right. Just reading all afternoon. Yeah.
Oh, fun. So here's a question. Because you're so good at communicating and connecting and helping people, how did you get to this place? Like, what is your I mean, was there a day that you woke up and said, I'm going to be a coach?
There was actually, and you know what's funny? It was like the last kind of crisis that the U.S. went through in 2008. I had been working in corporate production. I was freelancing, so I already was kind of working for myself. And I just was like, you know what? If the bottom is dropping out of the economy, this is a great time to make a mistake if I fail at having a business. And my husband was like, are you crazy? And like, I know so many entrepreneurs who started their businesses then, right? Because it's like, I'll just blame the economy if it doesn't work out, and I'll just practice and get better. No one's expecting me to make money right now. So that pressure was off. And I just was like, I'm just going to play and have fun and take my time. It just sort of organically rolled it out between freelance projects. And I started, people were already coming to me constantly and being like, will you help me fix my resume? And I was like, I'll help you fix your resume if you let me coach you for 1 hour on the interview process and you give me all kinds of feedback on it. And then I was like, now you have to pay me too, after I started getting better at it. And then friends were like, okay, if you'll help my friend, you know, they'll give you, and it was like $30. And I was like, great, I'll take $30. Like, you know, I just was practicing rolling it out for like the first 6 to 8 months. And then I was like, I've got a template. I know what I'm doing. And I was in a Toastmasters group and I had workshopped some of like the points I was going to have. So it was fun. That time was great. It was a blast.
And again, Toastmasters to an introvert has got to be a scary thing.
It was so scary. The very first time I ever gave a Toastmasters presentation, I was a guest and I said yes to the table topics because it was like jumping out of an airplane for me. I was like, oh, here I go. I hope the backpack opens, you know, and the parachute. And then I was like, I got up there and I went like this. I just went blank. I actually did that and said that. And then I just sat back down and I was like, I tried. I got up in front of people. That was a start. And someone came up to me during the break and said, you just put too much pressure on yourself. Try it again. Come back next week. And just knowing that, you know, he was right. It was like, okay. So, I mean, I failed miserably that time and they're letting me come back and encouraging me. I'll try it again. It was awesome. Loved it.
I think that's the beauty of coaching is you help people in so many different ways. I mean, that person who came up to you didn't realize that he was coaching you,
right?
The way he really was.
Yeah.
And I think more and more we're looking at coaches in a different light, and I think that's really important. Because I think, you know, with all of the craziness in the world, and I think most of the craziness really is because of social media and the TV's on all the time. Yeah. We never have that break. And so people are looking for some guidance, some support. And sometimes it's family and friends. More often than not, it is not.
Right. Because maybe we're changing our values, right? And so it's like, maybe there are family and friends who also want to change their values, but they're like, but this is how we've always done it. And they're struggling with it. So then what we do as humans is we put pressure on other people, right? I don't want to change. So don't you change, because that makes me have to look at myself, right? So then if we're really trying to grow, it's easier a lot of times to just say, this is the real me. I've never felt like I could say it or be it or do it. And I'm going to talk to a trusted stranger who seems to have like these really great blog posts that I relate to or something, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Well, it's interesting. You know, I kind of equate this because my background is actually food and nutrition. I started cooking when I was 11 and I feed people.
Nice.
One of those things. And what I always, so I'm equating this with people who want to lose weight and want a healthy lifestyle, because that's what, no matter what we think we want in life, we really want to be healthy and happy.
Yes.
Because they go together.
Yes.
And so the person who comes to me and, you know, wants to lose weight and they want the result. So they're over here. And the gap is that real uncomfortable piece. Mm-hmm. It's hard. It's uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. But you can't get from here to the.
You have to go through it
without getting in that uncomfortable place. And I do find that it's easier to get uncomfortable with people you don't know.
Yeah, right. It's true, because there's just we can give each other more grace when we don't have to constantly see each other. I don't know why that is. I don't know if you're familiar with the great Gabor Mate documentary that's out right now.
Don't.
Gosh, it's so good. You need to look that up, and I recommend.
What is it called?
So what is it called? Right now, the name of it is escaping me. But Gabor Mate has worked primarily with addicts in recovery. However, as a physician, this documentary is for all humans struggling with trauma and how the body stores the trauma and how we, then self-medicate in some way, whether it's shopping or Netflix binging or, it could be something really seemingly innocuous, but it is a challenge for us, and we're not wanting to process that. And so I think that it's just there's this great piece. The reason I brought it up is because there's this great interview with his wife who's saying it was really challenging to watch him go out there into the world and do this amazing work, and then come home and be a bear and overspend and still do his thing, because he still is a human being. And so that ability for him and her to be that vulnerable and show, like, experts are still people.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, that's huge.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think sometimes, and this is kind of the beauty of coaching too, is we don't always have the answer.
Right.
And that's what working with a coach is about. It's kind of working towards the answer.
Yeah. Discovery. It's a discovery process. Yeah. Mm-hmm. In the beginning, like when I was starting my practice, coaching was only urban. And so in my little area, in the suburbs here, I was the only coach, and besides two people who had been consultants who were using both phrases. And I remember like this workshop we were all at together, and there was the thing that said, what's the difference between a coach and a consultant? A consultant gives you the answers and has to have liability insurance. And a coach helps you discover the answers, right? And so therefore that isn't required, because I'm not saying you have to do this, and then if you fail, whatever. I'm not saying that. I'm saying, let's discover the answers. Let's find what your key motto is, for instance. It's in your language, right? I'm not giving you the language. We're workshopping it.
Right. And that's I love that. I need to keep.
Yeah, and it's empowering that way, right? And again, it helps us grow and change even more. A lot of coaches will say, like, my goal is to put myself out of a job. And I think, I've never had to say that, because I'm always there for support. One of the things I support is share your wins with me. And that doesn't cost anybody anything, but come back, stay in my circle. Let's be resources for each other. When I was on maternity leave both times, I asked clients to kind of like mentor each other and sort of do this group, because I wanted to take 2 months of just being not there. And it was great.
That's a really great idea too. And obviously it shows that you're confident in what you do, because you can say to your clients, support one another. Yeah. You're not afraid that they're going to go off and, kind of do something else on their own.
And I delegated. Yeah. I was like, what tool do you love that you think you want to help people with? And they all raised their hands, and the ones who were willing to be part of the tribe, and said, I love this tool. I'll do this one. And it was great. It was fun. It was really fun for me to learn, like, here's which tool was best with this person. Some of it I knew, but some I didn't.
That's really cool. I love that concept, because, with coaching, I think this is one of the things that I think people need to understand is it's not about the coach. It's about the coachee, not the coacher. Right. And we want people to connect. We want to create a support system, a tribe, if you will.
Yeah.
And it's, we'll use the phrase like-minded, but people who really do get to a point where they get it and they can move forward and support each other.
Yeah. And it's about, you said, to me, it's about the relationship. It's a little about both, because there are probably other people who do what I do, but they don't do it in the same way with quite the same tools. And I've had, clients tell me that one thing about me is I'm approachable. And maybe that means like, I've got this crazy hair right here. Maybe it means I didn't get my nails done this week, it means, maybe that's what approachable means, is like, I have the perfectionism, but I always say I'm a recovering perfectionist, and I'm trying not to be that. So,
yeah. And there's, you can be professional and be authentically yourself too. I mean, I think that's why people like to follow me, because sometimes like the flight and fright, I said it wrong again.
There you go. And that's fine, right? Yeah.
And I'm okay with it. And I know there are people sitting there just laughing, because they're like, that's so Denise.
It's great. I love it.
Because it shows, we're just human too. None of us are perfect. Mm-hmm. But, and obviously, the last 18 months have been far from perfect. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about, excuse me.
Yeah. Water. I'm joining you.
Tea time.
Mm-hmm. Good.
So during this crazy 18 months, I can't even, it just seems to be going on. It's like 24 months, 84 months.
Oh, yeah.
We've really been struggling with this peace and happiness piece. And I think, what have you learned during this pandemic that can help people right now to move forward?
Okay. So personally, one of the things I have learned is that it's okay for me to work with children, because that's something I would say no to my clients for. I mean, I've been doing this for 12 years in my area, and I have said no to working with kids the entire time until actually just before the pandemic started. And then during the pandemic, I've certainly reached out and been available to kiddos too, because the kids are really struggling with a lot of fight or flight, right? And I used to think like, well, I really focus on helping people unlearn old messages. So kids are still learning that, let's let them get the message, whatever. But how cool is it now to be able to say, let's just stop that message in its tracks. Snip, snip, here you go. You don't have to take this with you and struggle to unlearn it. And it's a faster process. It amazes me. People always say kids are resilient. Well, I get to see that in action when I see them like, here it is. This is the thing that's challenging me. And they come up with really cool hacks and tricks. It's amazing. So I think that a big takeaway for a lot of other people too is just like, we can learn from even the little people who are still growing,
It's so true, because kids will say things, they don't realize how smart they are, because they'll say things, and as adults, we just kind of look at them and go,
right? Because they speak their truth, right? And, depending on the age, 7 and up, they're really getting conditioned to sort of not do that. But if we work with them then and teach them, like, you can still speak your truth respectfully, it's so empowering.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. Because I don't have children, but my sister has 2 kids. My niece just graduated from high school. Oh my gosh, she's going to college.
I know. Yeah.
And for her, the last 18 months, the last 2 years of school were really tough, because she was home more than not.
Yep.
She ran cross country in past years. She didn't do that for the last 2 years. So like all of her social connections, and, the television being on and being home so much, how that has kind of affected her. Luckily, like you said, kids are resilient.
Yeah.
And she's a pretty, she's an intriguing kid. She's really an interesting kid. But even a kid who is, who is smart, who's funny, has plenty of interests, went through a period where, she said to me, she says, I kind of feel depressed.
Yep.
And I can't imagine this girl who I've known her whole life, coming out and saying that, because that was what she was truly feeling. Even more important, the fact that she was feeling it and said it out loud was really
great. That's so important, right? So, I mean, your takeaways from that, there are so many we can really dive into, but one is, from a neuroscience perspective and and brain development, these children and teens and 20-somethings, there are so many people who are mad at, they're breaking the rules, they're getting together. They are wired. They need to physically be around other people. It's part of how their brain is growing. It was physically painful for them to be separated in a way it wasn't for those of us who are past those ages, who have our brains fully wired. And so, I had a lot of compassion for that. The other thing is, I think that, even people who weren't prone to depression were struggling with it, right? Struggling with mental health issues. And so we can have this compassion for lots of other people and say any trauma creates this. And again, we can be resilient and learn if we manage that trauma. It doesn't have to be this kind of hobbled coping mechanism. Excuse me.
Now that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. And I'm hopeful that moving forward, the kids are going to be able to get back into something much more normal, where they can connect, and actually for the rest of us too, because the kids are wired to be connected to other people, but so are we as adults.
Yes.
There are times when I feel, and luckily, my husband's, sometimes he works from home, and some of those days I'm like, have lunch with me.
Yeah.
Talk to me.
Right.
Even though I'll talk to people, on Zoom, and it's, thank goodness we had this, but physically be sitting across from someone, to be able to really look at them in the eye rather than looking at the camera.
Yes.
A touch of a hand.
Yes, the touch.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. It's so important, Denise, and I always say we can't see our back. We have to have other people. We don't, you can be really, really situationally aware, but there's always a blind spot. You just can't see 360 unless you're in super meditation, which is a whole different show.
that might be one. My niece's boyfriend, he might be one to talk to about that because he's
really?
Yeah, it's really
That's
cool.
cool.
Like a 19-year-old boy, totally into
it. I love that. That's amazing.
Mm-hmm. Again, that's we're all different, we're all unique, and we all have different interests, and that's a good thing. We're all different, we're all unique, but we're all special to one another.
Yeah, like you were saying, not perfect but valid, right? Nobody's perfect, but we're all valid.
Exactly.
Love it.
This is awesome. I hate that the time always seems to go way too fast. Yeah. Coach Kiki, do tell us, how can people find you?
Yes, it's very easy. CoachKiki.com.
Simple.
That's right.
Any last words before we sign off?
Oh, yes. You know what? I just want to say, speak your truth and live your best life because you are worth it.
I have nothing to add to that. Fabulous. Okay, goodbye. Kiki, thank you so much. This has been so much fun. I really appreciate the time and the contact and the connection that we've made. I am so excited to connect with you now offline.
Yes.
So that'll be fun. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on another episode of the Wonder Series. We will be here next week. Let's see, every Wednesday, 12 p.m. Central Standard Time, right here, Facebook and not LinkedIn, YouTube. Find us here, Facebook and YouTube, and we will be here again next week. Till then, I leave you with this: healthy living, happy life. Have a great week, everyone.